Hello and welcome to Unlock Your Life. I'm your host, Jennings Smith. Today, I've got a guest in the studio, Miss Shannon Ryan. She is an author. She's written children's books. She's written books for adults. She's a financial planner, advisor, CFP for 30 years. She wanted to come on because she has a different take on money. She talks about the psychology behind money. How much is enough? What are the wounds that we carry in regards to money? And how are those shaping the decisions that we make? When I saw her bio, I thought, I want to have Shannon on the show, share her knowledge, share her experience. So Shannon, welcome to Unlock Your Life, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jennings. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Okay, so let's get right into it. Wounds. I don't think about money as wounding me, but at the same time, I have thought, man, I got some PTSD on some issues when things have gone wrong, and I don't want to repeat those. I don't want to touch the hot stove again. So what do you mean by that?
Right. Gosh, I named my book, Your Money Has Feelings, and money doesn't feel anything. Money is a monetary exchange and it doesn't feel anything, but we feel a lot of things about money. Meaning we have huge emotional responses to money, and they're based on a lot of things. A lot of our wounds or memories that we have around money, some of them we're not even aware that we have the wounds, meaning that we watched our parents fight around money, or we didn't have a lot of money growing up and couldn't afford the cool clothes or shoes to fit in at school, or we had an early experience in real estate. You made a bad deal and you lost a deal, so now you're gun shy, or you lost a job, and that stuff stays with us and impacts our later decisions, sometimes unconsciously. We're not even aware that that stuff sticks around and causes us to be more cautious than we should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I graduated college in 2006 and I was building spec homes. And the timing probably wasn't great with the economy turning in 2000. It really didn't hit down here until like 2009-ish. Yeah. But in 2009, it was like the construction faucet shut off. And that burned into my brain. Do not build specs. Don't do any speculative. Don't do any development. And it's been 15 years and I'm finally doing my first development project because I've gotten pretty familiar with real estate. But it was like burned into me. Okay, those are the guys that went bankrupt. Those are the guys that got way over leveraged. They had all these spec homes out and they went under. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just build custom homes, which is a more slow and steady way to earn a profit, but it comes with a ton of headaches as well. And so I think that had I not had such a knee-jerk reaction, because obviously speculative building can work and does work. But that I think that's a microcosm of something that happened directly to me. I was like, I'm not building specs because I saw this happen. It happened to me. I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, no, you're right on. It's interesting. 2008, 2009 was it's a lot of big lessons. What happened was liquidity dried up. So if you're on a spec home and you have loans out because you're building a spec home, you also need the other side. You need somebody to buy the spec home. And typically that person who has to buy it needs to go out and get money. They need to get cash. And there was no cash to get. There was no loans, liquidity dried up, and everything started like a domino to collapse after that. So it was a really interesting time. I still hear people today say, I was ruined in 08, never got back. And I think 15 years. Yeah, take your hits, take your lessons, but we have to reframe and realign what we want to do financially and keep moving forward. And these periods of time happen. They come with a lot of lessons. Lessons from 08, 09 is if you're in real estate and you need liquidity and you're leveraging liquidity, meaning loans to get something done, you better have some cash in the bank too.
Yeah, and I mean the flip side of that is there is real risk and there is preparing for worst case scenarios and not getting yourself over your head. I mean, there's a balance to everything, but you said in your bio something about financial confidence actually has nothing to do with net worth. And I thought, okay, that doesn't really make sense to me. But then I'm actually rereading this book, The Psychology of Money. You probably have heard of it or read it, but they talk about moving the goalposts. And so I remember back when I was a teenager, I thought, man, if I could have $4 million net worth, I would be set. I could make $200,000 a year if I could just generate 5% off of that. I'd never need more money than that. And the funny thing is like wherever level you're at, you typically think you need twice as much. And, as I've hit those goals and surpassed those goals and I'm looking at what I think I need, I'm like, it's about double what I have now, maybe even 4 times what I have now. I'm just like, I keep moving that goalpost. So what would you say to people like me and maybe listeners facing that?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, I'm just going to go back to the previous question. You're absolutely right. Liquidity was that safety net during that time. So, I mean, it's really how you do the risky investment. It's still risky, but having a backup plan. So that was on nail on the head on that one with you. The second one is money is not about net worth. Money is about what you're going to do with the money. So, we live in a society where if I said, Jennings, you're so successful, people are going to think, oh, Jennings has made a lot of money. Like it's always back to a monetary measure of your life. There are a lot of people that have made a lot of money, and yet we don't examine the quality of their lives, meaning is that money in alignment with how they want to live their lives? Or are they just accumulating money and there's no enjoyment with it? So true success, to me, is not measured only by net worth. And net worth it's a measuring stick. It's a way that we can quantify where we're at. You want a positive net worth. You want your liabilities and your assets to be in a positive situation. And there's a certain amount of net worth you need for cash flow and retirement. You said it. You wanted 4 million, so you could kick off $200,000 to live. Those are important measuring sticks. But what's more important is from a psychology perspective. What is the money for? Meaning, what are you doing? So many people accumulate big piles of money and never enjoy it. They just want to hold on to it, look at the bank account. They open the accounts in the morning and I feel good. Or if the market this morning was a great example. It was roared out of the gates this morning and now it's pulled back. So you could even during the course of the day have an emotional roller coaster if you're not grounded in what's important to you.
And I think some of that may be the way you were raised. It may also be just your personality. Like I see that in my kids where some of them are more free spending. They're more generous. Others are more maybe tight fisted where they're like, okay, I want to save and I never want to spend any money because I want to accumulate. I'm kind of more on the saver end of the spectrum. My wife's more on the spender spectrum. And I think it's good because it's like neither one is really like right. Like that and extremes of both are definitely wrong. And, my wife, she wanted a new kitchen and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's going to cost so much money to rehab this kitchen. But now I walk into that kitchen every day and it's like, I love it. It's beautiful. And I enjoy it. Yeah. But if I wasn't married, I definitely wouldn't have remodeled that kitchen. I'd rather have the money in the bank. That's just the way I am. Yeah. But am I really walking that balanced viewpoint of that? So financial confidence, though, like how do you separate financial confidence from net worth?
So financial confidence is the definition of confidence means that you feel good and assured that you're going to be able to accomplish what you want in your life financially. And that's going to be completely different for every single person. Every person has different goals, different retirement goals. When you do what I've done for as long as I've done it, people will come up at a party and say, hey, Shannon, how much money do I need to retire? What is a healthy net worth? Or this is what I'm worth. What is everybody else worth? Everybody wants to talk money because it's such a taboo topic. And if you talk money all the time, everybody wants to talk money with you. And the reality is what I'm worth or what you're worth really only matters if it's going to get us what we want. Meaning that there's a certain type of retirement. My husband and I, we've got a beautiful home in Southern California. Our kids are just finishing college right now that we've helped pay for. And we want to go into retirement and we want to be able to do some extensive travel. And we want to be able to help take care of the kids. And there's dollar amounts to all of that. And as long as we have enough money to do all of that, we have a lot of financial confidence that we're living the life that we want to live, not just the net worth statement. It's very empty to have a lot of money, but not being enjoying it. You can't throw it in the grave with you. And yet people hold on to it out of fear and they don't live the lives they want. So confidence is having the confidence that you have afforded yourself with your investing and with your resources and all your hard work, the lifestyle you want. And if that may just be having a small house on a river with a rocking chair that you can rock and that you've got enough food and a roof, you've got financial confidence that you can do that your whole life. That's a very different net worth than somebody who wants to do something a little bit more grand.
Yeah, and I think people don't take the time to think about, okay, well, what am I really going to need, and how much do I need to have as a nest egg to generate that, and what kind of lifestyle am I want?
Yep.
And I read this book, Die with Zero, and it was very eye-opening about how people's spending habits actually trend downward into retirement, and how the utility value of a dollar when you're 40 versus when you're 60 versus when you're 80 is very different. When you're 80 years old, you want to sit on the couch and watch The Price is Right. You don't necessarily want to go to Morocco and Australia and Japan and travel the world because you're tired, you're old, and so that utility, even though you have the money, the utility of the money isn't there, the enjoyment's not there. And so his premise was to plan that out, to enjoy the money or to give it away or to spend it on, your kids, et cetera, versus just that hoarding out of fear. But it's hard. It's easy to say, but it's hard to know how much am I going to need and how much is enough.
Yeah. It's hard. It's an art, not a science. I mean, I'm very familiar with the book. I read it. His premise is correct. The premise is enjoy your resources. Things change as you age. I've got 80-year-olds that are going to Morocco. So, I mean, it depends on the human being too. We're all incredibly different with our lifestyle, with our physical. Some of it is in our control. Some of it's not in our control. There's a lot of people who get sick with things in their 30s and their 40s that they didn't anticipate, that limits what they can do physically in their life. So we don't know, when we're going to die. So dying with zero is a fallacy because you can tell me the day that you're going to die. I can help you spend enough money to make sure you die with zero. But other than that, what he was really saying is enjoy your money. So that we're in alignment. The question is how to do that. People come in my office all the time. They come in with all of their investments and here's my real estate, here's my investment, looks how well I've done. How am I doing compared to everyone else? And my first thing I do is push it aside and said, awesome. Thank you. We're going to get to this. Tell me what you want. It's kind of like the Spice Girls. Tell me what you want, what you really, really want. And give me details. And I make people nervous because often what I get met with is silence, like, and shifting around in their chair. And they're like, I haven't really thought about what's most important to me financially. Then I'm like, what is all this money for? What is all this money for if you don't know? So that's the key for me is when we start to align resources and the whys. Why are your listeners investing in real estate? I would assume to create passive income and not have to report to a corporate job. And there are a lot of, my guess is everyone has a different reason, but they should know why they're doing it.
Yeah, I would say the biggest reason I hear is freedom. They want to be able to do what they want, when they want, with who they want. They want to feel that autonomy of not having, oh, my boss, I got to beg him to let me, take a week off or whatever. I think that's a piece of it. However, I mean, life is work, and I mean, working for yourself is just as hard most of the time as working for somebody else.
Or harder. Yeah.
Do you have a structured way to help people figure out what they want? Because as you're asking me this question, I'm like, that is a hard question,
I do. Yep. It's a hard question because many of us, most of us, have preconceived notions. Like you had the $4 million. Like most of us have a number. Like that's our number. If we get there, then we're successful. Some people, it's very simple. If I just finally pay my debt off and I have a little bit of money in the bank, I'm financially successful. Then they get there and the goalpost moves, so things start to move. The best way to really start to understand what's important to you is this, in a situation like yours, is to sit down with your wife and to really go through and say, have both of you articulate, if you had to make decisions today, what all of your money, if you put all your money in a big bucket, what is it for? It may be you guys want to help educate the kids. You don't have to pay for their college education, by the way, but if that's something that you guys want to do, some of them may not go to college. The trades are huge right now. Maybe you guys want to travel, you want to do the new kitchen. What's important to you? What's important to your wife? Ultimately, if you were going to live your most successful financial life, it may be living somewhere else. It may be having a vacation home. I would put everything on the table, and I do this with clients without any restrictions. Don't say, well, I want to do this, but we'll never have enough money. Forget all of that. Have an open conversation. Just put, if we were so financially successful that every decision was on the table, we could do whatever we wanted, what would our lives look like? And then you work from there, meaning there is a finite amount of money, even with people that have hundreds of millions of dollars. But in the end, decisions need to be made on how you actually live your financial life. And if you do that in alignment with what's most important to you, you actually find financial joy too.
So if I'm having this conversation with my wife, is this at some point in the future, like when we're 60 or when we're 65, or is this like today? What's the time frame on that?
Today. Do it
Today.
today. It's interesting. I do it today. I had, a few years ago, I had this young couple that came into my office, and they were both with I'm here on the West Coast. And so Google and a lot of big tech firms are here. And so this is a young tech couple that came into my office earning great money. And they had just bought their first house. They were in their early 30s. They got a gorgeous house. California pricing on housing is ridiculous. And they were pretty excited about it. So they came in with all their stuff. They started their 401ks, and they had some investments, great income. I pushed it aside and said, so what is money for you guys? What's important to you about money? And they both said, well, we're early 30s, we're married, we just bought our first house. We want to travel, especially if we have kids. Like, we want to be able to just take off and do some cool travel, when we have time to do that. I said, great. What are your trips planned this year? And they said, no trips planned this year because we just bought this house. We're a little bit strapped. I'm like, well, we used to call that house poor. Like, why did you buy such a large home with just the two of you, knowing you wanted to travel? And they said, culturally, they came from a culture, an Asian culture, that dictated that the bigger house you bought, the more successful you were. So to their family, they really pushed themselves to show their family how successful they were. And they bought more house than they should have on their incomes to do anything else. And they were counting on their incomes going up. Well, when the income go up, we'll travel. And I basically said, what happens if something happens to one of you in the next couple of years? I think you need to sell the house, downsize, create some more cash flow so you can travel now. If that's the plan before kids, you've put yourself in a position financially. And they both were shell shocked in the beginning because they both had this expectation that to be successful. Pardon me?
That's not what you hear from a typical financial advisor either. To be that blunt with them and say, hey, this is what you say you want. This doesn't align with that. I love that. That's great. Okay. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah. And they did. They sold that, and that's okay. No, it's funny because I just was talking to someone else. They're like, Shannon, you're a little bit straight shooting. I'm like, I am, because unless we shoot straight with each other financially, we don't get what we want. And so they ended up downsizing to a gorgeous smaller home. It's been several years now. They've been on major trips every year. Every time they come in my office, my home, I work out of an office, but it's my home. They're thrilled. They're happy. They're living in alignment. And it was a huge mind shift for them, not just because they were young, but they didn't realize they were living their parents' dreams, not theirs. They were living their cultural dreams, meaning this is what you have to do to be successful in our culture, is to own these certain things. And they weren't living their dreams. And I just gave them permission to do so. They ended up doing it themselves, and they're happy people.
Yeah. Yeah. I bought the house I'm in 2019. So I guess it's been 6 years, and it was a little bit of a stretch for me at the time to buy it. But it was, prices really weren't too high, and they've since doubled since in the last 6 years in the Charleston market. And, but yeah, it's like, I have a great mortgage on it, very, very low interest rate, very low leverage. I love my house, and it's plenty big enough for my 4 kids. And
Yeah.
yes, I could afford to go get a bigger house or a better house or a newer house or whatever. But I'm like, I like that it's not a huge financial burden on me, you know. It really doesn't hurt at all to pay the mortgage every month. It's like, oh, okay, whatever, you know. And I'd like to get it paid off maybe in the next couple of years. So it's just I, I I like that, and I want to prioritize experience. I mean, I'm not like a stuff guy so much. I
Yeah.
like buying stuff for my wife because that means something to her. But like I'm more like, hey,
Mhm.
let's take the kids to Disney World, or let's go visit your family up in Ohio, or let's go to the Caribbean, or
Yep.
go to Italy, or whatever. Like that is the stuff that matters to me. And prioritizing that, I think is important. So I really like that. Was good advice you gave that couple.
Yeah, well, and it's sometimes it's I find myself giving people permission a lot to enjoy their money. And I know that sounds crazy, but I find that, we have people who don't have enough. So they're wondering how to make more money, how to create income and all that kind of good stuff. And then as people become more successful and have more resources, I was always shocked early in my career how few people really use their money for enjoyment, meaning allowing themselves to align it with what was most important to them, not what society expected. If you enjoy experiences, you want to take your kids to Disney World, that's awesome. One of my clients I met with yesterday, she's got a big birthday coming up. She's turning 70, and all she wants to do is take all of her grandkids, 11, to Disneyland for the day. Very expensive, like over the top expensive. Get hotel rooms, and I'm cheering her on. And they have more than enough money to do it. And her husband's like, oh my gosh, the bills. I'm like, forget it. Write the checks, just do it, enjoy the hell out of it, and stop thinking about the money. You can afford it. And we have to learn to create emotional freedom from the shoulds and the guilt that we carry around money.
You know, and in thinking about the young couple, if they are stretching and they're up to their nose with their house and they have to continue to work and they have to continue to increase their income, and they can't travel, and then they want to have kids, and then they push that off because they need to be able to travel, or God forbid one of them loses their job, or the mom or the dad wants to quit the job to stay home with the kids, and now they can't. Like, it's starting to dictate more important things than your house.
Yeah. Well, and
um,
it's and if you're not living in alignment, it puts stress on the marriage with all those things that you just said, because you and I both know you live enough life, things happen. Like life is not linear. It doesn't just go straight up. Your income doesn't go straight up. You'll have good years, and then we talked about 08 and 09. 08 and 09 hit. Then you'll do well again. So you have to be ready for some of those bumps in the road. And especially if you're working together financially as a couple, if when those bumps come and you don't have reserves, if you've stretched yourself too much, it creates an enormous amount of stress on them. You could lose a marriage over it by stretching too far as well and not keeping things in alignment.
they say that's one of the number one reasons, right, for divorce is money troubles. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
um
Yep.
yeah, I in the real estate world, there's hard money lending, and I am a
Right.
co-GP on a lending fund. And the nice thing about this fund is it's liquid, right? Because it's spread out over so many loans,
Mhm.
you can put your money in, you can pull your money
Yep.
out. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh man,
Yep.
I'm just gonna do my own loans. Like, I've got some cash, I'm just gonna do my own loans instead of making, 9-10%. I can make 15 to 18% if I'm just doing it myself.
Mhm.
And that
Mhm.
was true, but the liquidity was gone, right? Because somebody goes for 6 months, now they need to extend another 3 months, and like, you don't really want to foreclose on them. You want them to refi you out, and all of a sudden, a couple things go sideways with another deal, and man, I wish I had that cash, but I've tied up hundreds of thousands of dollars out on the street, and I can't access it, and so that liquidity now, as these loans are paying off, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to put this into the debt fund, or it's just a more liquid thing, because as a real estate guy, that's not liquid. And sometimes I'm jealous of people that have large portfolios in the stock market because it is so liquid.
It's not liquid. There's a big article this morning about private equity. I mean, private lending in the in the real estate area, just about how we're starting to see some liquidity dry up, which actually lends itself to private lending, but you've got to be very, very careful to keep a certain amount of liquidity for all the reasons why you just said. Otherwise, you get into a need of finding lending yourself. And that's what ultimately happened in '08 is people were so speculative and tied up all of their resources in real estate because things were just, you couldn't go wrong. It was boom, 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 boom. But if you didn't keep a certain amount of reserves, liquidity for the event that something may not pay out, meaning you may get drug out an extra 3 months, or I've got some mezzanine investing that got dragged out an extra 5 years. Can you handle that with liquidity? And that's the question.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So money beliefs holding you back. I've heard this called limiting beliefs. I've definitely had some of these myself. What are some common beliefs that you see, and how do you help people uncover what those are?
So, it's interesting. There's a lot of limiting beliefs. I was just taking a look. My whole first chapter is about limiting beliefs. A lot of our limiting beliefs come from family of origin, community experiences we've had. They sound a lot like, I should be doing this. I can't do that. It won't happen for me, or I don't have enough knowledge to go down that route. So our brain tells us a lot of things that really limit, and a lot of it is based in fear. It's interesting. I don't have any tattoos, but I've always said if I got a tattoo, it would say "Noli timere," which is Latin for "be not afraid," because fear drives so many of our bad decisions and so many of our limiting beliefs. But Brene Brown talks a lot about shame, and shame from a perspective of the shoulds. I should and shouldn't. People like, well, I'll just do it myself and I'm going to be the hero. And we really limit ourselves when we want to be the hero, or we're always the victim. And a lot of this stops the flow of money in our lives.
Okay, so elaborate on I want to be the hero. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm. So often that if you want to be the hero, I hear when it comes to money, head a household. Jennings, you and your wife, I don't know who heads up the money in your household, but my guess is since you're in real estate and you're probably doing more of the transactional work, that you're probably more involved in the money, could be wrong, than your wife is. I'm certainly more involved in the investment side for my husband, and my husband does kind of the day-to-day bills for us.
That's where we
And
are.
being a hero is, pardon me, that's how you guys do it?
Yeah, exactly.
So the way that being a hero is not being the only one making decisions, meaning that, well, I'll just do it because, I'm an investor. I'm a CFP. I've been doing this for years. I'll just take care of it. I won't involve my husband, and he won't know what I'm talking about anyways. And it's always on me. And it's kind of like, so I've got to take care of this myself. And these conversations can limit the marriage, can limit what you're doing with your money, because in the end, it's better if you are making a decision as a family, that things are being done together. And don't be the hero if you don't have all the answers. You said at the top of the show, which was, I think, amazing, that, hey, Shannon, I'm good at real estate, but stocks and bonds and investing, that hasn't been my primary gig. And so having somebody who can support you and your wife if you start doing outside investments, building cash reserves or doing other investments in the stock market, you don't need to be the hero, know everything. You're an expert in real estate. You seek professionals in other areas. But if you don't, because you want to be the hero in something you don't know anything about, it really limits your success.
Wow. Yeah. I think she's spoken a mouthful if you're listening there. And I've made that mistake of, not checking with my wife, kind of thinking exactly what you said. She's not going to understand this anyways. I know what I'm doing. And that's not true, because she knows you better than anybody else in this world. Most likely your spouse does. And they have insights into stuff and a vision of a lens that you may not see. And it's funny because on this development deal, I do kind of recognize the risk I'm walking into with this. And I was asking her over and over, like, what do you think? You think this is a good idea? Are you sure this is like where we should go? And she's like, yeah, I really do. I think it's great. I think it's good. And now we're looking at a 32,000 square foot office park. And I'm like, well, what do you think of
It's
that?
awesome.
And she wasn't as hot on that. And I'm like, all right, I don't know. Let's talk about this more. Maybe am missing
Yeah.
something here. And but yeah, that being the hero, you could call it ego, you could call it pride, and that usually is not gonna lead you into anything good. So
Yeah, it'll limit. It'll limit. I made a decision. I had my kids later in life. I was almost 40 when I had my first child, and I was running financial firms for another big firm. I wasn't back in private practice. So when my kids are pretty young, I decided to go back into private practice so I could be present, like I could show up for my kids. I wasn't on the road. I was traveling over the country. I was doing 2 or 3 regular shows on the East Coast, and I decided to walk away from all of it and some pretty big income and spend little over $1 million to go back into practice, meaning I was going to acquire assets so I didn't have to build everything from scratch. So I'm walking away from, huge income, and I'm spending $1 million. And I came home, and I made the decision on March 9th of 2009. It was absolute the abyss, the bottom of the market. And I made this decision with my husband, and I walked in the house, and I'm like, well, pulled the trigger today, walking away from, I was making close to $1 million a year in income. And so I'm walking away from that. I'll have no income. And I just spent $1 million that we didn't have in cash. So I either just committed financial suicide or made the best decision of our lives. And he looked at me and goes, you just made the best decision of our lives. And I spent the next 2 years, and I remind myself by going back and looking at my Social Security report, meaning I think I made $24,000 the next year and like $30,000 the next year before things started to ramp back up. And it's a really great reminder that sometimes we have to take risk. But I couldn't, in respect of my husband and our relationship, take that risk. I couldn't be the hero to say, I know this is going to work, because he was on board. I mean, he was taking the risk with me. The thing went down. I didn't know what was going on. We were at the very bottom of the stock market at that time. And I went back into private practice. It's kind of like, I don't know, I just jumped off a building. Great decision. Glad I did it every day. But that's in the rearview mirror. So I needed him on board. And I if I was a hero and that had gone sideways, I think it would have ruined our marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. And but sometimes, you do have to let go of a good thing to pursue your purpose, to pursue a great thing.
100%. Yep.
You talk about fear, construction, doing it, pretty much since I was 19. And I could always,
Wow.
I could always make $150,000 to $200,000 a year. So I was like, I made okay money. I could put food on the table. My wife was home, so I didn't have income on her side. But I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like what I'm doing. I don't like, grinding it out and dealing with all the clients and the subs. And I'm just, I can do bigger things than this. I want to do bigger things than this. And I sold the construction company, and that gave me a couple year runway of getting like about $8,000 a month, which isn't all that much, but it was something. And that gave me time to build up my portfolio and make the turn into real estate full time. And, eventually it's obvious, surpassed that. It's been a great decision, but it was scary, and that fear, if I just been like, look, I got 150 to 200,000 in the hand. I can't let go of that because I might fail and I might not be able to make that. I never would have had, the experiences I've had and built what I built. So kudos to you. I know how that felt because it's scary.
It's terrifying, but I'm positive if we had enough time to go through the entire story, and I know your audience probably has heard a lot of your story, I'm positive it wasn't a straight line, that you made that decision, everything went perfectly, because it never goes perfectly. Meaning there's mountains and there's valleys, but as an entrepreneur, as somebody who is involved in money, and over time, my guess is you had mentors and people along the way. So when I say don't be a hero, and don't be a victim, meaning you were not a victim of 08, 09. Liquidity dried up, meaning my favorite 4-letter word is next. Okay, we got to pivot. What's next here? And if you can do that and then bring in people who are wiser than you in other areas and be open with your ego to get feedback and input, that's where, yes, you're still going to have down periods or make mistakes, but you'll pivot faster, you'll move faster. And that's where every entrepreneur ultimately finds success.
Okay, I want to go back to, you know, that question. What do you want sitting down with your spouse? You said what's
Mhm.
on the table without limit that you want to do now, not necessarily when you're 70, but what you want to do now. What's the next step after that? Like once they uncover, okay, yeah, travel is important to us. We want to be able to send our kids to private school or to college, or we want to be able to buy the vacation house in Naples or whatever it is. Like, what do they do
Yep.
after they've lined out some of those things? Or what do
So
I
the
do?
next step is starting to take, yeah, what you do. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take a look at, now you're going to bring those papers back of everything that you own, and you're going to open up and take a look at your goals, because the retirement still needs to be considered along the way, because ongoing savings for retirement or education, depending on the age of your kids, is typically done incrementally. So you take a look, and I think of things as buckets. Take a look at all the goals. If it is someday retirement, but right now it's, hey, we want to start to travel, we want to help pay for kids' education. At what level? Like, how much are you going to pay? Are they going to go to state schools or meet? So how much do you want there for kids' educations? So then you start to quantify what each of these goals would cost you. Then
Hmm.
you take a look at what you have and you start to fund the goals, meaning you don't have any money that isn't invested with no goal. Meaning you start saying, hey, this ultimately, this investment is going to fund retirement, or this investment is going to help fund the kids' education, and this investment is going to pay for our everyday living, or this investment is going to pay for the travel. And you start to put it together. If you're finding that, yeah, I put everything on the table, I can't do everything, then you start prioritizing. Well, what's most important? Meaning, I don't need to pay for my kids' full private education, $75,000 to $100,000 a year for undergrad. They can come to the table to get loans, but mom and dad will put X number of dollars. Okay, minimize that so you can do something else. So then you start to prioritize. The best of all worlds, you can do everything, but that's not realistic for most people. For most people, once you put everything on the table, then you start to say, okay, what is the most important things to us as a couple? And let's make sure that those things are funded. And that's part of finding this financial confidence, is if you know that you're funding the things that are most important to you, even if you have to let a couple of those wild dreams go, it generally will breed a lot of happiness in your life and what you're doing professionally, because you know you're getting where you want to go.
I'm writing this stuff down because just recently, my youngest, she's 6, and so now she's going to school in first grade, and
Mhm.
so all the kids are
Love
gone
it.
for about 5 hours, 6 hours a day, and my wife is like, she's starting to think about. She's coming out of the fog of just intense little. We have 4 kids, so and she's like, hey, I
Or
want to think.
kids, yeah, it's a
Yeah,
lot.
she's like, I want to think about financial goals, and I want to think about like, are we doing enough for our kids, private school and public school, or sorry, and
Yeah.
college? Are we, and all these things that she never really has said a word about for the last decade that I have been working on in
Hmm.
behind the scenes. But I'm like, I think I need to go through this exercise with her and for myself, just to be like, okay, yeah, let's
Yeah.
clarify, what does it cost to pay for college for each of our kids? What does it cost to, have this level of income? What does it cost to do these travels and trips that we want to do? And let's get every dollar having a goal. All your dollars have a goal. I like that versus, oh, well, we got a couple grand left. All right, yeah, let's go do this. Let's spend it, because it's there. So
Yeah.
I just think it would give her a lot more peace and confidence. And you talk about that, you know, creating peace. We all want peace around finances, and I think that's why people pursue passive
Yeah.
income, investments, etc., retirement. They want to have peace of like, it's going to be okay. I'm going to have enough. I'm not. I don't have to be
Yep.
afraid.
Yeah. Well, and there are no guarantees. I mean, things happen, but if you know what you have and why you have it, meaning what the goal is, the other piece of it, and you said something super important, Jennings, you said, well, if we have a couple thousand left over, then we're just going to spend it over here. The problem that people get into is they have goals, they don't clarify them. They spend the extra money that they have because they had the extra money. Then they look up and someone says, hey, we've got this awesome trip we want to go, and you guys want to go. And you're like, oh, we just spent that 2000, we don't have enough money. The reality is you did, but you didn't make a conscious decision on it. You just spent it. So many of us spend resources on things that don't matter to us. And we tell ourselves we can't do things that we could have done if we had been more conscious. So it, my sister once told me, and it drove me crazy because I've been in money for so long. And she's like, Shannon, ignorance is bliss. My husband just takes care of it. It's so good to be ignorant of all of it. I just want to just float through life and not worry. And I said, I don't think ignorance is bliss. Are you positive the kids educate? I mean, what's important to you? Do you know that you're being able to take care of that? Oh, he's got all that done. I said, does he even know that's a priority to you? And my brother-in-law, of course, is behind the scenes cheering me on because he always wanted his wife more involved to make sure that where, the money was going, what they both really wanted. So ignorance isn't bliss. And you can spend money on things that didn't really matter to the two of you and cost you things that you really want if you don't pay attention.
Yeah. And that's opening the door for a problem, right? I mean, you hear stories of where the one spouse thinks the other spouse has everything under control and they don't, and there's major issues in the background, and they're ignorant about it, willingly ignorant about it. They don't want to know, right? And that's not right. Or that the husband is not prioritizing what the wife thinks he is, because she hasn't communicated that to him. And so, it's you got to have that clarity. It's not right to just be like, oh, well, I'm not going to worry about that. And it's also not right for me to be like, well, I don't want to involve you in this because, I don't want to have that accountability. And I don't want to have your input and have to take that into consideration.
That's a good thing to say out loud because it is a huge red flag, and it could be for men or for women. Women, it's so interesting. Just going down gender lines, women shouldn't be out spending money and hiding bags in the closet. Don't tell daddy that I just bought my fifth pair of Christian Louis Vuitton shoes or whatever. I mean, it's some of this spending and some of the brokenness that people have around money and relationships can really cost you a lot ultimately.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm great. I mean, I think probably everybody's spouse maybe spends more than they would like, but my wife is there's no financial infidelity, I guess would be a good way to put it. And I think financial infidelity can go both ways, where if I'm not telling her about financial struggles that are happening or deals that are going sideways, etc., I'm just hiding that. Or she's spending money without like having it budgeted or wanting me to know about it. It's like, that's really dangerous waters to be in.
And most people are in dangerous waters.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Well, this is a good episode. Mm-hmm. If you're listening, you got to implement some of this stuff. You got to buy the book. Your Money Has Feelings. Shannon-Ryan.com. Shannonryan.com with a hyphen in the middle. One last thing I want to talk about, the failed budgets. This is something that I've really struggled with. You said, failed budgets, why they fail, what actually works. If you could speak to irregular income, I feel like, man, if I worked for corporate America and this is my salary and I get this check every 2 weeks, okay, I get it. I can but I've got taxes to plan for. I've got deals that are going sideways. I got cash I need to short. It's like, it's not that easy to say, okay, just live by a budget. So what do you propose there?
Yep. I don't love the word budgeting because it shuts everybody's brain down. Like, all right, we're going to put you on a budget. I mean, it's kind of like we're putting you on a diet, and no one loves that. It's negative. But you do have to understand what I refer to as your run rate. You need to understand whether you have a regular income or not. You need to know how much your family needs on an annual basis. You can break that down to a monthly basis. I find the best way of handling regular or irregular income is taking a look at what you spend. We are creatures of habits for the most part. So if you take a look at where your family spends money, so if you and your wife spend the majority of your money out of one checking account, meaning that the money comes in and that's where you're paying the credit card and you're paying the mortgage and all this stuff's coming out, that bank account will tell a story, meaning what came in and what went out. But more than anything, it'll show what your spend rate is. Because so often people will budget, they'll put you down, this on groceries and this here and da da da. They're always wrong because something comes up, the car needs new tires. We need to replace the refrigerator. So, or it's Christmas or it's the kids' birthdays. So it's just more expensive this month. That happens every year. So take a look at an annualized budget, divide it by 12, and that's what your run rate is on a monthly basis. And then you can plan for the year ahead. If you've got income that is not regular, you need to have a cash reserve that can fund what you need to spend for the next year, even if income stops the flow for a period of time. But you need to understand what it's going to cost you to live realistically, to plan for it.
So go through your last 12 months of what you've flowed out of your personal checking and what's flowed out of your credit card if you're using a credit card, and then smooth that. Yeah. And then when you say reserves, if you have an irregular income, what would you say reserves needed? 12 months, 6 months?
I think irregular income or business owners, if possible, should have up to 2 years. And that does not mean that it's sitting just in cash. Cash is earning you nothing. Money markets right now are earning a little over 4% a year. You could have 1 year in a money market account. You could have the other, conservatively invested a 70-30, where there'd be a little bit of bouncing around from an equity perspective. You could have that money working a little bit harder, but don't shoot the moon. Don't try to shoot the lights out with this money. This is the backup to your business to make sure your family eats if everything goes sideways 1 year.
See, and that was kind of my mistake. I had that run rate, put it into something illiquid, and it stressed me out. It's like, it's fine, but I just, I would have done it a little differently. And I don't have to do it again,
You don't have to do it again, but you learned the lesson and you were able to rebound from it. If I could teach my kids anything, and they've heard this from me a million times, is come out of college with an emergency fund. It sounds very basic, but make sure that if you've got a regular job, if you're an entrepreneur and you've got irregular income, I think you should have close to 2 years. If you've got a regular job, 6 months to a year, but it's very hard for most people even to keep 6 months or a year somewhat liquid without spending it. But if you have that and you keep yourself out of consumer debt, meaning revolving credit card debt at like 25 to 30% interest, you can live a pretty peaceful life financially. And it's worth the mind space to do it. Sometimes people have to work a second job or a third job or whatever they have to do to get out of that revolving debt and create a cash reserve. But once they do, it's almost like this emotional stress just lifts. Now that you've got a cash reserve, now that you've been through that, the way you feel every day about your family, your money, your resource, I guarantee you is more peaceful than when you were in the middle of, holy crap, I don't have enough liquidity.
I think that's the most important thing you've said. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think real estate people need to hear that, especially because we're notoriously bad at plowing all the profits into the next down payment, scaling up the portfolio, buying the next deal, which you don't have to do. You can take on JV partners that are bringing cash. You can raise capital. You can help use your skills to earn other people money and use their liquidity if they have excess liquidity, right? So, but people are like, well, I've got 8 units now, and I refinance them, and I can go buy 3 more, and they never have cash in the bank. And the first blip, it's really stressful. And if it's a bad enough blip, they're gonna start losing properties, which is definitely not what you want to do.
No. And it's happened time and time again in history. History has been a great teacher, especially in real estate. There will be blips, and it's everyone thinks they're going to be able to predict it. And talk to anybody that was around in 2008. Many times this stuff goes fast and it's not predictable.
Gotcha. Well, hey, my takeaways, talking with your spouse or significant other, what's on the table without limit? What do we want? Quantifying all those goals. What are they going to cost me to do? All of your dollars should have a goal. Then prioritizing, potentially cutting back some of those goals, and knowing, okay, this is an A priority, this is a B, this is a C, this is what we can do, this is what maybe we can't do. And then fund the most important Am I saying this? I can't even read my own writing on the last point here. Sorry, but it's basically
You're going the right way there. You're fund the most important goals.
exactly fund the most important goals. Thank you. And then what is your run rate per month?
Yeah.
Like taking 30 minutes to go look at your credit card statement, your bank statements for the last 12 months and being like, what am I actually burning a year? What does it take to support my family for a year?
Yeah.
And then if you got a job, maybe 6 to 12 months liquidity. If you are irregular income, 2 years liquidity is going to make you feel a lot more peaceful about smoothing out those ups and downs of your income. So lots of wisdom dropped on this podcast. I appreciate you coming on, Shannon. Thank you very much.
It was fun to be here, Jennings. Thank you for the conversation.
Okay, guys, so don't forget, Your Money Has Feelings. This is Shannon Ryan's book. Her website is shannon-ryan.com. She also has 2 children's books, The Heavy Purse and The Lemonade Stand. I'm going to be checking all these out, getting some copies for my kids. So, Shannon, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Have a great day.